So, you know, Ocean Drive, Tanya called it the heartbeat of Miami Beach. It is the heartbeat of our tourism industry. I mean, I hate to use that analogy. We call it our Disney. It's our hook. It's what continues to pull people from around the globe to come to Miami Beach and, of course, Greater Miami by extension. And like any destination in the world, it ebbs and it flows and it evolves. And sometimes I would submit to you, we are our own worst enemy sometimes. Because when you ask people around the globe, and I'll show you some of the information and some of the recent research that we've done, the Ocean Drive brand is still strong, a very strong global brand. I mean, granted, I think there's room for improvement, and I think some of the experts will talk about that. But I know this session is called about reimagining Ocean Drive. I'm a little hesitant to call it don't throw out the baby with the bathwater is what I'm going to emphasize, because as the research clearly indicates, the power of Ocean Drive is still very, very strong in the global view. In fact, this was a review just 2 days ago on TripAdvisor, which some would consider the top, rating system. And this is a gentleman and his family. If you can't see his photo, that's with his young daughter, great target audience, just enjoyed from India, no less. So they travel thousands of miles away to go to Ocean Drive. And hopefully you can read it, but if not, I'm going to read it one at a time. Beautiful place with a party atmosphere all together. People come there to just relax, drink and dine. Many playing different forms of beach volleyball, some biking, and most of the people enjoying really tempting cocktails. Overall, a very lively place. Best to go in the evening, but any time of the day is fine, enjoyable. So I wanted to pull that up and emphasize that we live in this community, we love this community, and sometimes we're the most critical of the community, rightfully so, because there is room for improvement. But I wanted, from my perspective, the Greater Miami Convention Visitors Bureau is your sales arm to communicate to the world, to bring people for tourism, for meetings and conventions, and Ocean Drive continues to be a very, very, very powerful brand throughout the world. So just, great testimonial on TripAdvisor. What I did want to kind of drill down quickly is, we get about 60 million visitors to Greater Miami. And when I say Greater Miami, of course it includes Miami Beach, Miami, but it's all the cities that comprise Greater Miami, which is, as you know, Miami-Dade County. We're upwards of 35 cities now. So when you look at our 60 million visitors on the left-hand side, it's about half and half, international, domestic, and that's a key mix. So as you go through this process of imagining or reimagining, be very, very mindful, of course, of locals, residents such as yourselves, at the top of the list. But when you look at the visitor mix, you are talking to the world. Our percentage of international visitors is the highest percentage of any other place in the globe. So while 50% of our business is international, you go to New York, it's about 23. You go to LA, 17. So as you go through this exercise, be very keen on the international visitors as well as the domestic visitors. International folks spend a lot of money. They come in bigger groups, typically in families, and I know that's a big priority for the Ocean Drive. So that's something that you may want to be mindful of. And the great news, when we ask everyone, what do they like most about our destination? Ocean Drive is number 3. Weather, beaches, Ocean Drive, shopping, restaurants. We have folks surveying every day throughout the community, at our airports, on Lincoln Road, at our visitor centers, and these are the top 5 responses of what they like most. So Ocean Drive is right up there, and that goes back to what I said earlier. Ocean Drive continues to be a major, major draw for our community. Of all the people that come to Greater Miami, in 2017, 75% of them visited Ocean Drive. That's that's about 12 million people. So of all the people that came throughout the year, 75% went to Ocean Drive. Again, and these are considerations. So continues to be a major draw, but by the same token, and thankfully the GOB is going to call for some dollars to improve some infrastructure throughout the city. Legitimately so. Tourism generates a lot of great economic benefit for the city of Miami Beach, but it also has an impact on infrastructure and quality of life for residents such as yourself. So that's the balancing act. But lots and lots of folks. And if you'll go back in time, the percentage of people has grown fairly consistently, right? So it was about 9 million in 2013 to about 12 million in $20,000. Slightly less educated, college graduate from 67.5 to 65, but 2 percentage points, nothing dramatically different, I would say. And then the last line.
I just have one question as to how to read this.
Sure. I'm sorry.
When you say profile of overnight visitors to Ocean Drive, do you mean overnight visitors who are staying on Ocean Drive, or do you mean like somebody who could be staying in Miami and just answered that they visited Ocean Drive?
Thank you so much. So, overnight visitors, the universe of overnight visitors, remember that 16 million? Okay, so the first is, that's the overnight visitors. Of all the overnight visitors that said they visited Ocean Drive, does that help? And thank you.
No, it's not overnight visitors to it. It's the two Ocean.
Well, that's why, and I appreciate your question, and hopefully the clarification makes sense. So these
not a hotel stay. You're talking about just visiting the street.
Overnight. They stayed overnight somewhere in our destination, and they visited Ocean Drive.
And we don't know how they visited Ocean Drive.
Airbnb.
Just put on it, or whether they ate it.
But wait, there's more.
Okay.
Just bear with me. Bear with me. Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question about how
No, excuse me, let us get through the presentations first, and then we'll get to the questions.
We're looking at quality here too.
Right. And that's the point. So the last line, when we say leisure travelers, just think of it as people on vacation, right? So when we attract people, people come for vacation, they can come for business, they can come for meetings or conventions. So this is just, we could have had lots and lots of numbers, but I cherry picked some. So leisure travelers. So what you will notice is on a percentage basis, more folks visiting Ocean Drive, staying in on Greater Miami, a higher proportion of people purely on vacation, and a little less of those folks that would be here for meetings and conventions. I think part of that function is our meetings and conventions business has been a little bit weak. Our convention center has been under construction. So right off the bat, with all the great stuff that is happening thanks to the city's leadership, new convention center, headquarter hotel, organically, we're going to start seeing a shift from that number, hopefully moving forward. So let me race through some other stuff. In addition to our ongoing annual research that we've been doing for 20 some odd years, earlier this year, we did very specific research only on Ocean Drive. So the research that I do happens throughout Greater Miami. I'm at attractions, I'm at visitor centers, I'm at the airport, and I'm asking questions, not me, but my team is asking questions, and all the things, how much do you earn, where did you stay, how much did you spend, etc. And did you visit Ocean Drive? That's one of those questions. In addition to that, working with the Ocean Drive Association, I want to thank Ceci and Mike and other folks, we went in specifically and only to Ocean Drive. And we asked questions that we typically wouldn't ask, because some of those questions were with locals. We don't ask questions about locals. That's not really our core function. We talk about tourists. But we added that element, because then I think the timing was perfect, because I think it gives some information for these types of conversations. So, and I'm going to give you some quick highlights, because I think you're going to give me the hook pretty soon, right? Okay, cool. So anyway, part of it was to determine the satisfaction of those visitors to Ocean Drive. We wanted to see differences. Do locals and visitors, like what's some of the differences? And of course, we wanted to go deeper on this profile of the Ocean Drive visitor that I mentioned earlier. And I apologize if the numbers are a little bit too small in the back, but this will be available and we can distribute. So when you look at the geographic, this is where people are from. So of all those surveys that we did earlier, the number, I forget, was the 800 or so surveys, and we're going to do more in December, by the way. On average, about 31% of everyone that we surveyed were local. So let's say a third, just to round numbers. Broward County, about 3.3%. The three colors are the three waves that we did. We had in April, the red, July, the green, and in the blue in September. So I stacked them so you can see. And the reason we did three and now we're doing a fourth was we were out there around spring break. We were out there in July, which is kind of like, arguably more locals, perhaps, proportionally. And then in September, AHIMA was in town, that conference, and we're going to do another one in December. And we'll keep doing this as often as we can, because we want to provide the city, especially, with as much information on the visitors to Ocean Drive, whether they live here or not. So if you'll notice, elsewhere in the U.S., so about 26%. And then outside the U.S., that's that international number, 34%. So more than a third of all the people we spoke to during those waves were international visitors. And then the other numbers are relatively small. I won't spend too much time on that. So that's just purely geographic breakdown. I think there was a question of where people were staying, right? So on average, about 60% of the folks that we spoke to are staying in hotels. About 9% on what is commonly referred to as Airbnb, peer-to-peer, VRBO, HomeAway, all those. Friends and family. A lot of folks are visiting friends. That's the best way to stay, right? You don't have to pay for it. So about 10% there. Another 10% rented a residence, which we do qualify the difference between renting a residence and peer-to-peer. But you can almost put those together if you want to. And then day trip. Some people are just coming in and out of town. They may have been here for an event. They drive down from Broward, from Palm Beach, the West Coast. They enjoy the day. And now with the advent of Brightline, I will tell you that we're looking at that closely for more what we're calling regional tourism and day trippers. So that is something to be mindful of as well. So let me just kind of, most popular activities, I don't want to go through all of these, but obviously the beach is up there, restaurants, more than half, shopping. Now again, the universe of all these answers are only the people that we surveyed in those 3 waves. So these are all people literally on Ocean Drive. This is another really important thing. And again, I know there's some challenges, and those will be discussed in more detail, but in research, and I have a research director, I'm not the research director, but we have someone. Typically what you do is you combine 4 and 5, and for you to have a 96% intent to return, either extremely or very likely, that's a very high intent to return from a statistical perspective. So now, there's a difference between the local and the tourists, but they're still both fairly high. The locals, 95% if you add the 80 to 15, and on the tourists, 96. Those are really high intent to return, which are consistent with what we see from our other research. People come to Miami, they want to come back. Their overall experiences are very, very positive. Maybe not always perfect, but very positive. Most like, not a shock, beach, the ambiance, the variety of restaurants, the safety, security, adequate police law enforcement. Okay, so this is what they most like. And that's the question we asked. From 1 to 5, what are the things that you most like? On the flip side, what are the least liked? Restaurant solicitation was the top least liked. I guess restroom facilities, parking, traffic. And I've got lots of research behind this. And then what we did is we pulled some quotes of activities that folks would like to see more of, and more things for teenagers, more sporting events, more for kids. Música en la playa, so music on the beach, I guess is the best way to say that. More outdoor activities like bouldering. I'm not quite sure I understood what that is. I guess they want to see rock climbing. I don't think that's doable. Cultural activities, a place to barbecue, more bathrooms. So we just cherry picked some of these statements. And then we went a little bit deeper. I think these bear a little bit of note. Muscle Beach came up more often than I think we had anticipated going in. I guess it's the new workout area that they have at the city, and I know there was a lot of emphasis. When we say people's traffic behavior, I'm assuming it's not a good thing. I'm assuming what they're saying is traffic, the way that we generally drive in Miami is not something that's very positive. But here you go. This is just a couple of additional feedbacks that we were getting. The last one talks a little bit about gratuity, not surprisingly. But I'll close kind of like where I started, right? So I showed you a post on TripAdvisor from a very positive post from 2 days ago, and I scanned them, and they're mostly positive. In fact, when you go to TripAdvisor right now, and I did this right before I left the office, Ocean Drive as a destination's TripAdvisor rating is higher than almost any hotel in Miami Beach. That's not me saying it, it's not you saying it, that's what the guess. And this one happens to be 11,647 reviews. And I'm sure there's some negative things in there, and maybe that's arguably where the focus should be on how to make a strong product even better and stronger. And again, I'm couching this from the perspective of the visitor, the global visitor. And I also went to Yelp, and Yelp is not as strong, and Yelp is not considered as powerful as TripAdvisor, but I thought I'd mention that, and you can, for yourselves, go on there and you'll see that, those ratings. So again, from our perspective, Ocean Drive continues to be a premier destination for tourism. High satisfaction levels, which is what we like to see when we're marketing. Parking and traffic, not surprising, and I know there has been some measures that the city has put into place. Satisfaction in general is very high, nightlife, shopping. So with that, I'm going to close. I probably gone over, Tanya, I do apologize. I'll be around for questions, my phone number, my email. With that, thank you for your attention.
I do want to let everyone know that we are filming this event, and included in the video will be all of the presentations, so you'll have time to go through the statistics and dig into them a little bit more deeply. We talked about a lot of the changes that have been put into place already on Ocean Drive in terms of putting in, we alluded to the changes happening on Ocean Drive with increased citizens, kind of eyes and ears on the street, and making sure that the beach creepers and lurkers get routed out as quickly as possible. There are initiatives for additional police that have been effective already, and more to come with the Ocean Drive, with the GEO bond that's just been approved. But really, Ocean Drive Association, Ceci and Mike and Dave and all of their colleagues have done are working very hard to make this as strong as possible and make it even stronger than we might even know. So some of the things that have been kind of on the down low for the last couple of years, work that's been happening that they're ready to talk about, and that can also serve as a springboard for things we can look forward to. No, it's coming. It's not working.
Look, I'll just say over here, I don't want to come down and be overbearing, even though Rolando did a great job. I think statistically, you just heard so much in a very short amount of time, but is that it? Yep. But this, the purpose of coming here tonight, by the way, from my perspective, I'm sure David and other people up here, is not necessarily to hear from us. I want to hear from all of you and hear what your wishes are, and then talk about things that we are doing to help meet you and become this incredible destination that we all desire and want it to be. And we can hear from Rolando that it's nice to hear we're high on TripAdvisor, but as we all want to be, we want to be higher. We want to get better and do things better, so we're committed to that. I think the most important thing to recognize is that the Ocean Drive Association was revamped about 2 years ago. Not that the past was bad, but we needed new leadership, we needed new direction, so we created a board. And on that board are several prominent investors and both owners on the drive, including David to my right here. We made it a goal that we're not going to accept the status quo, and we're going to change and make this a better street, not just a street, but OMXC. So we go to the next slide here, Ceci. I think it's really important that this picture's 1,000 words, but it tells a lot. People tend to forget what Ocean Drive was, and then they still see it as some issues that we all know exist. But we inherited the street, and we had these umbrellas and awnings all over the place, and they were blocking all the beautiful architecture. They were tough to see the issues that went on within the cafes with the police. So this is only, I think 16 months ago, 17 months ago, went on a major plan in conjunction with the city, and a lot of you in this room to help, where we basically omitted and got rid of that whole gauntlet, that shade, that indoor meets outdoor experience, and we opened up the street. And I can tell you that although some people still, from the operational standpoint, might have challenges, the overriding experience is so much better. Do we still have challenges? Of course, but there's no longer this long gauntlet being stuck in a shady place. It's all about being outside, it's about seeing the architecture, and it's about experiencing and giving the police and the other enforcement people the chance to see what's going on and to have the pedestrians obviously walk and be at least a 5-foot clear walkway, not a walkway you go back and forth. Obviously, we'd like to see that in the Geobond get bigger, but we're going to talk about that later. So that's just kind of spells out the really the bigger change, but there's been so many other changes. As a board, we put on a street manager. You go to the next slide. We hired a full-time street manager, Michael De Felipe. A lot of you might know him, and his job has been to go out there and basically police and report, or actually work in conjunction with our association, but with police, with code, and with all the business owners that are participating with our code of conduct, to look at the street and improve our street infrastructurally. Those are simple things that you might not think about, but like trash, sanitation, cleanliness, all those things that set the tone for the guests and for the residents when they arrive. So simple things like repainting streets, repaving areas, cleaning up landscaping, work with the sanitation department to have the trash cans on a regular basis taken and relieved. He's gone to the, as far as to the Lewis Park itself, to the sanitation of those restrooms. And there's a huge we call it the pre-bid movement, which is the business improvement district. Things we're doing now that can just be the easy low-lying fruit to start improving what's happening there. He's also on the street dealing with some of the illegal vending and other issues that are constant nuisances and working with code and police. And in fact, at the Ocean Drive Association today, it was probably the most collaborative meeting I've been to in a long time with both police code and us about working together, not just being enemies or these certain cafes are working on their own, but ever working together to improve the guest experience in the residential walk that goes down there. And I will tell you this, I can guarantee if you walk down there tomorrow, it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. I can promise you that, and we're not done. Quickly moving on here, I want to make sure that we're all aware that we're not doing this just because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for many reasons, but we have to meet the expectation for what's happening on our street. There are so many projects of multi-million dollars that are being invested in Ocean Drive. And people tend to forget, well, look at the Betsy, we know the Betsy's there, beautiful property. Go to the far end, you got the Solino, which we're calling Tibet's getting ready to open first of the year. 3 parcels there of absolutely beautiful hotel. Oh, it's 4, excuse me. Beautiful hotel, cafe, restaurant. It's gonna be spectacular. I think it's on the left over here. Then you have the Solino, which talked about Lario's and the Beach redid their building, which also the Cardozo's gonna come online brand new. The Tides, our beautiful Tides, which is probably the mecca of Ocean Drive, is now getting ready to reopen, and they've expanded beyond the Collins side, which then will bring this Tide Village to the consumer market. And it's a really unique ability for consumers to go back and forth. And it also helps all these Betsy's and Tides that connect Collins to Ocean are helping clean up Collins as well. Okay, so there's a lot of investment. Next to me is David from Infinity. They did the old, the 1200 building, which is almost ready to come online, which is used to house the Palace. They've got a beautiful new facility there. They did 726, the old Scarface building. So we have an expectation as an association to meet expectations for you as residents and for these owners to upgrade and make this a better place. So we're not sitting on our laurels and waiting. We really do believe in transformational change. We don't want just, that Geobond was all about transformation. So if you're expecting us to kind of clean up the dirt and allow certain things to take place, you're going to get a big awakening because we're going to clean up a lot. Okay? Not just the infrastructure, but the operations. Just quickly, look at the economic engine that Rolando brought up. It's just the reality of the situation that we can make it better, and we will, but there's a ton of economic impact coming into the city to the tune of about 10% of all the revenue from resort taxes comes from Ocean Drive. Okay, that's a lot of money. If you add Collins, that's 20%. So we owe it to you to do a better job, to keep that financial money going in and moving up. But you need to understand that it's in everyone's best interest, especially as a resident, that we do well, because it offsets a lot of the property taxes that we would then be pushing upon you. So we're dedicated to getting there, and we want to see that go to even 25, 30% in the future. We think we can get there, and it would be great to perform at that rate and show that those monies back into the cleanliness and the sanitation. Lastly, here, moving on, the future of Miami Beach global destination. As you all have probably seen, this is one of the iterations back in the day before there was a geobond. It was just an idea that a couple people at City Hall had in conjunction with an architect. And this was a beautiful tabletop experience where we said, well, what can we do with Ocean Drive to make it pedestrian friendly, to make it flexible, to make it beautiful? To me, it's this iconic destination that we talked about. The TripAdvisor has all these great ratings, but it should be identified when you get there as the place to see and be. And I think it's so important that that park becomes a piece of the street, almost like it falls into the park for all those pedestrians. So we're committed to work with the city. This new panel that you're going to hear about is obviously going to have a lot of direction, how this should look and feel, but we're committed as an association to work with them and to make sure that we get a product that you can all be proud of, that you can walk down, enjoy, that we can limit some of the traffic we have on the canals from a vehicle standpoint, and obviously potentially expand cafes and activate that park. So what does that lead to? Well, there's a man in the audience, David Collins, to my right. I see him over there. He has a black shirt. David Collins is one that is well known for his business improvement district. He's someone that has created the Lincoln Road bid, the old Coconut Grove bid back in the day, the Washington Avenue bid, and the Wynwood bid. So you ask, well, what are the business owners doing beyond the Ocean Drive Association? Well, we're committed right now to a business improvement district, which means that we're going to go and put together our own assessment, our own tax assessment to each other that will then be used to improve the street. And I don't mean just the street, it's the district. Collins from 5th to 17th, and Ocean Drive from 5th to 10th. David's a consultant. He does this for a living. He's helping us put that together. It's not easy. It's expensive. We're putting the money that it takes to get there. Hopefully to get to a point in a year we can have a vote with the owners. I see you saw Rose back here. They just performed theirs in Washington Avenue. They got a nice bid over there. So we have a Washington Avenue bid and potentially a South Beach bid that would join that. And what does that bid do? Well, it takes money out of our property taxes, goes to the county, comes back to us to allocated segments that include more police, more sanitation, activation of Loomis Park. Not just a place where peddlers can hang out and walk through and take advantage of the system, but a place that has activations for residents. That can include things like a jazz night. It could be some type of monument. It could be artistic, cultural things that are happening that you'll be happy to see out there. And I think we owe it to you guys to bring that. We're going to market the street. I know one of these gentlemen here said we want a quality guest. Well, we want a quality guest as well. Okay? And we're not someone that's going to get that unless we do it the right way. We set it up correctly and we market it correctly. So that's a big part of what the bid wants to do, is to market to the right consumers and get the message out there that benefits all. And then lastly, we want you to basically recreate the cultural aspects of the street. So it's not just, it's got other elements than not just the drink and eat. I mean, that's obviously important, but it has other elements that people can enjoy. So it's going to diversify the street and really cater to all sorts of different people that come in and out. So that's the bid. You've heard from Ocean Drive Association. We're committed. Did I miss something, Nancy?
Yeah, the quality standards, enforcing the quality standards.
Well, that's in there. But I mean, the quality standards is basically what you guys are talking about. We have an internal code of conduct right now that runs through the association, which we have about 2/3 of the members in right now on Ocean Drive. The tenants are cafe owners. And some still don't follow the rules of the code of conduct. What the bid will do is establish an actual governing body that then will hold them accountable in conjunction with the city. So it's a quality standard that would address things that are now nuisances or negative. So it's all about us working as one in conjunction with the city and creating what you guys, ladies and gentlemen, all one drive, best Collins Avenue, best MXE you deserve to get, okay?
Great. Thank you very much. I have about 1 million questions. I'm sure you guys do as well. Let's get to the next couple of presentations and then we'll go into questions and answers. So Cesar is going to tee up his presentation and talk about what it could look like.
Right, so thankfully on the last presentation, there's not going to be 4.
Well, I'm going to make some comments. So just
But he's not going to do a PowerPoint, sorry. So thanks, I think it was great to start off with Rolando started off earlier today that Ocean Drive is a global destination. We all know that, but we sometimes forget it because it's also our front yard. And you know, it's something that we like to think about and use that belongs to us. But Ocean Drive is of the scale of a street, it's of the scale of a city, it's of the scale of the planet. And I think when we think of Ocean Drive and we think about reimagining what it could be, we really need to think beyond our personal point of view and think about the world's point of view. Add it to our own and see how we can improve the entirety of it. So what I have today is no numbers, no charts, no words, just a lot of pictures, right? To sort of get something across as to we know what we have, and the recent improvements have been dramatic. And we can all remember what it used to be, the sort of tunnels that I used to call them, of trying to traverse Ocean Drive, but the improvement still is pretty regulated. You have a line of tables, you have a line of sidewalk, you have a line of parked cars, you have a line of travel, a line of parked cars, a line of sidewalk, right? It's very stratified, and it really serves as a separation between the beach, the public realm, and the buildings. What I'd like for us to think about is those lines are fictitious. We made them up. They don't have to exist. And there are places and things that we can look at that might help us think of what we could do instead. So I have maybe a dozen slides or so, maybe more online. But they're going to go quickly, and they're in a couple of groups. One, share the street. There's a whole shared street concept. You've probably heard of this before, but instead of thinking of the public right-of-way, which is what it is, it's our public right-of-way, as a series of lines, really think of it as a series of users, right? It's not about where this line, stay in your lane kind of thing. It's we have people who walk, we have people who drive, we have people to eat, we have people who enjoy themselves, and how can we make this work for all of us? The examples I'm showing, the titles are on the bottom left. If you can't see them, it doesn't matter. You know, the presentation will be up on the website, but it's also going from furthest away to closest to home. So, as an example, this is a shared street. There are people, there are cars, there are bicycles, there are sidewalks, there's benches, and all of these things happen in collaboration with another. This is in the UK. We can't do this locally because of rules that we have with pedestrian safety, but what the good thing is that this is a city street. So the city has complete control, I would say, over this right-of-way. You don't have to deal with the county too much, you don't have to deal with the state too much, and you can really do what you want. So the idea of mixing the way that people use and move through particular spaces. And some examples, transit, moving cars to the outside, moving them to the inside, creating public spaces, adding trees, kiosks, thinking about how the right-of-way can be used by all different users, and again, not just stratified into different places. Inclusive of permanent and temporary play structures. You know, it doesn't have to be a serious thing all the time. It doesn't have to be 10 blocks of the exact same thing. It could be a series of different experiences that happen along the entire way. And you get a sense of different things that can happen, including, you know, as was just done, adding islands of landscape to soften it up a little bit as opposed to having 100 feet of concrete, and allowing people to circulate as they need to or shall throughout the system. You can incorporate transit in this particular case, you know, maybe not heavy rail or light rail, but transit nowadays is shared vehicles, you know, Uber, Lyft, taxi cabs, and so forth can be integrated into the design of these particular spaces and really feel like a seamless adding a force to the environment. And, you know, daytime and nighttime. It's not just the ground plane, it's not just the horizontal pieces, it's the sky plane or the tree plane. And this is, as you know, something that's useful all of the time, but really thinking about blurring the lines of those separated uses and locations, inclusive of perhaps in creating spaces that aren't just the 4-foot right-of-way where the tables are against the tables, against the walls, but maybe creating some pockets where you can bleed out into the space a little bit more. Also, make it a place for people. This is something that we all think about and talk about, but right now, it's a place for cars, right? I mean, there's more right-of-way given to the automobile than to the people. This, again, as we mentioned earlier, is a global destination. Crushes of people come through here, and the cars are probably not as necessary as they are, the volume of them as shown in the location. Some ways to do that. Art installations, right? This is not new, but you can think of art in many different scales, whether it's a walk that exists on one side of the street or the other, so you can create some environment that's more conducive to possible families, create event locations so that people can locations. Everyone that I've ever known goes to Chicago, goes to see the Bean and the Crown Fountain. And these are things that are useful during the daytime. There's something that adds to the list that Rolando mentioned about why people come out here. This will be something that is a campus. Instead of getting 75% of the crowd, you get 100% of the crowd coming out to Ocean Drive. As well as something that can be all day and all night for not just the current users, but all future users. Families come out still at nighttime to play in these particular areas. So rethinking the type of users that are currently there. Again, large scale down to small scale. There are events that happen out there now, but maybe we can have locations where instead of closing down the entire right-of-way for an event, you can close down a block of the right-of-way, have a small event more often, so you can really change the way that people engage in Ocean Drive. And then this is up on Lake Worth, the ability to bring the people and just enjoy the street as their public right-of-way. And we own the right-of-way, belongs to us. What can we do to make it something for all of us, not just tourists, but residents alike? And then use it, right? We're talking, our Deco weekend is an incredible thing, but use it a lot. There's always a conflict with food trucks and brick and mortar restaurants, but there's always room for some of this, so you don't need a lot of it. It could be something that happens every once in a while. It also is a festival area. Right now, Ocean Drive is our front yard. It's our global front yard. So when we think of having an event, where do we have it? It's going to be there. And then really thinking of taking over the entire space is an interesting and fantastic way. This is Las Fallas in Valencia, where it's just an amazing series of events that can happen up and down that particular street. This happens 1 week a year. It can be a lot of fun. Or smaller events. A film festival can then spill out, and then you can have certain areas along the right-of-way that can just be more utilized to the public. So use the space, not just for storing cars, but for people as well, so that they can enjoy it. And everybody enjoys it, not just the regular people that come out, but maybe new users can come out and enjoy the space. And then it's so hard to do, right? It's impossible. We've been at this 25 years. We're not getting this stuff done. Just do it. Right. An example, you guys have been to New York, you probably heard about these tactical urbanism projects. This is Pearl Street in New York. The image on the left shows a sort of surface asphalt parking lot that they decided to get rid of. They painted some lines, put up some planters, and turned it into this public space that is now crushed during the day and night with new users, and all of the businesses around there are doing 100% business over what they were using before. Nobody misses the parking lot, right? No one's ever going to miss that asphalt parking lot. So if we rethink how we want to treat the space, we have the opportunity to do it. And this then becomes more permanent. You guys may be familiar with the Times Square in New York. It took them a long time to get there, right? In 2005, it was a nightmare. If you guys have been up there, it's been Broadway, it was just all cars, and people just jammed into those 5-foot sidewalks and 8-foot lanes. Then they closed it out for a day, put the chairs out there, and everyone loved it. Then a few years later, they did a little piece of it, and then a few years later, they did all of it. So as soon as you do something and show people that you can rethink a space and that you can do something that's new and exciting, people will be against it at first, and then they'll try it out and say, hey, the world didn't end, let's do more of it. And this is what happened up there. It's uber successful. Right now, there is an example. One of the cities that's doing this the best, London, is doing the pedestrianization. And some are pedestrian only, some are pedestrian friendly, but the pedestrianization of public streets. This is Oxford Street, which is probably the busiest shopping street in London. It's also the most polluted shopping street in London. It's also the ugliest shopping street in London. So they are looking at doing some renovations. This is an example of what it could look like from the air. You can take a look at it from the ground. This is just a little bit of paint, some landscaping, some lighting, and you can get a sense of something like this. The reason I'm showing this as the last of the slides is, what do you think is happening right now with this proposal? Anybody want to guess? They're excited about it? No, they're about to kill it, because the business owners are worried about traffic and parking. So, it's a matter of thinking of, do you want a really wonderful public space, or do you want to worry about things that may not be of any consequence in a few years when traffic and parking is going to be very different? And that's it, a few images of what hopefully we can reimagine Ocean Drive to be, and I'll be here to take any questions.
Okay, and before we open it up to questions, Don's going to give a few thoughts on from his perspective.
I'd like to initially tell you about, very briefly, how we arrived at Ocean Drive, because I think for Nina and I can say that Ocean Drive has changed my life. Some observations of living on the streets for 25 years. We live on the second floor, so we have we have 2 window seats in our small unit. We probably see more of what goes on here than anybody else, and also some suggestions for the future. So 31 years ago, in 1987, I was living in Boston, visited my dad in Boynton Beach, heard there was an Art Deco district. I had collected some Art Deco posters, drove down to Miami Beach, took a tour through Miami Design Preservation League. When I finished, I went to a phone booth. They had such things then. I called up a real estate firm who happened to be Streamline and said, can you show me a condominium in an Art Deco building on the water? 5 days later, I came back on New Year's Eve, saw 1 unit in what is 1390 Ocean Drive, which was originally the Van Ness Hotel, and the Morris Hotel, and the Milburn Hotel, then the Ohio Hotel, then the Seashore Hotel, now condominiums. I put a deposit on it, paid another $4,000 for parking space, drove back to Boynton Beach, got up the next morning and said to my dad, guess what? I'm buying a condo in Miami Beach. To which he said, you're crazy. So I would check on my investment every year. I would fly down once a year. I'd stay for $30 a night in the Netherlands. I saw all the scaffolding going up. Initially, there were 3 restaurants on Ocean Drive, including one in our building, Mappy's, which was in the last show of Miami Vice. And it began to get really very exciting. I could see the old people sitting on the metal chairs. Now, that would be me. And we moved down in 1993. So when I was invited on this panel, I sort of had 3 initial reactions. 1 was cynicism, 2 was acceptance, and the 3rd is hope. And frankly, after listening to what I've heard tonight, the hope is a little more than I had. Cynicism because when we came down here, Nina and I really jumped into community affairs. We actually began working with Nancy Liebman, and we worked on the first noise ordinance for Ocean Drive. So now I understand there is a noise ordinance being proposed for Ocean Drive. Great. 2 years later, there was a BID that started, and it was up and running for a couple of years. Now there seems to be a real effort for BID. Supportive of it? Great. My own sense from living on the street for all these times, and I think I speak for you, Nina, we just sort of felt it's gone sideways. Maybe that's unfair, maybe the volumes have gone up. Look, and if you guys are happy, that's what's important. But that's just sort of my perception, it just went sideways. So that really brings about the second thing, which is really acceptance. Sometimes we talk in this community about residents versus business. There's not an issue on Ocean Drive. There are very few residents. There are like 2 condominium buildings. There's us, there's the Drake, there's Netherlands, nobody's there. You guys have invested millions and millions and millions of dollars. This is a tourist street. It is a key component of tourism in Miami and South Florida, and you guys control the destiny, and you should. And that's right, and I'm comfortable with that. And we're not the type of people who choose to live next to an airport and then complain about the airplanes. But the third thing I had, and again, as I said, I got more of it from listening to you, is a little bit of hope. And when I think of hope, I think of the guy who really helped establish Ocean Drive 35 years ago. It was Tony Goldman, who came down here, was wowed, bought 18 buildings, and he had a vision. And what Tony said, Tony had these great expressions, and some of us were fortunate to get to know him a little bit. Well, one of them was, vision is daydreaming with your feet on the ground. And maybe this is a time for a little daydreaming. Maybe this is the right time for a little vision. And that's really where I hope we are. So I'd like to talk a little more on the basis of personal observation from something that's been discussed here today, which is sort of pedestrianizing the street. And I'll go for the most extreme version of it, which I know rankles some people, which is closing off the street to all car traffic. And that's been talked about every few years, and it often gets sort of eliminated. And I think that the rationale, I guess when I hear people talk about it, the response I usually get is, Well, you can't do that. The hotels have to get service. There are a whole lot of logistical issues that if you shut off automobile traffic totally, it wouldn't work. And I understand that, but let's say under the daydreaming thing, if you said, okay, sometimes people say, I can't do this, when they really mean, I won't do this. So just pretending, instead of saying, this is an impossible obstacle, let's pretend it was a problem that could be solved. In which case, how would you solve it? What are the downsides? What are the benefits? And how will you approach it? So I'd sort of like to really talk about that. You know, the initial issue, traffic is sort of a funny thing, and we see it from our second floor window. Ocean Drive is the ultimate road to nowhere. You don't get on it to go anyplace. It's not connecting from A and B. There are only two reasons to be on Ocean Drive. One is maybe to drop somebody off at a hotel or valet. The other is to cruise. And I would bet, Rolando, if you did a survey of cars going down that street, 4 out of 5 would be cruising. And Morris Lapidus once said correctly, an automobile never buy anything, and I can promise you these automobiles really never buy anything, because when we're there at peak cruising times, which we'll say is a weekend or a crazy period, you know, sometimes the cars are either 5 inches off the ground or 4 feet off the ground. Now it's very entertaining. Nina will say, hey, look at this, you're not going to believe this one. And it's sort of a fun thing for us. However, if I'm spending $300 a night in a hotel room, I'm not all that excited about it. So how would you solve the logistical issues? And I guess here's the way I would think about it. Say you would try and solve it. If you look at the 10 blocks of Ocean Drive, the block between 14th and 15th Street, that's a large block. But the other 9 blocks are not. There may be 400 feet each. You have a street end at each side, at each block. It's maybe, and if they're an average of 8 buildings a block, then 2 of those buildings don't even have a problem. 25% don't have any problem at all because they're right on the street. The others are maybe 150 feet away from the corner. You also have the surface alleys into our building by the alley behind. And Finnegan's Way is the sports bar right next to us. They get all their deliveries there. Maybe you do reserve 1 lane for service in the front. On the other hand, you know, the Betsy, and you guys at the Betsy have done an incredible job, you know, what an asset, but you know, so far-reaching to combine a Collins Avenue hotel with an Ocean Drive hotel, generate some economies of scale and an Ocean Drive address. Well, if more people do that, then you already have your frontage right there. So those would be ways that really mitigate or solve it. And by the way, not only is the driving annoying me as I look at it, but the parking is. We have 1 row of parking. The city's making $2 an hour on prime real estate. Why? 4, okay, 4 minus whatever service costs there are. Why is this a good deal? This is real estate that you guys could be using and the city could be benefiting. 250 spaces on 10 blocks of Ocean Drive is not going to solve our traffic crisis. But besides, so anyway, let's get, what are the 4 benefits? I see 4 benefits of street closing or at least partial street closing. 1, you reduce traffic. You reduce traffic because I can tell you in those times you have just people coming here to cruise. Second, if you capture, let's say you capture 3/4 of all of that space, maybe some of it is for cafe tables. You expand it not by 2 feet, but by 10 feet, and really give yourself a decent amount of space. 3, you do some programming, just like Caesar is suggesting. You now have some hard surface. Maybe it's level to the street. I mean, I know there are all kinds of iterations to look at, but you then have an addition to Lummis Park that can be used for more programming, whether it's like Umbrella Sky that they did in Coral Gables, or you look in Providence, they did fire water, you know, where they did torches by the river, created events there that have literally revitalized the city. Or you bring in somebody like Wynwood Yards to do some sort of events. But if you're able to recapture that street and eliminate the cars which are generating no revenue for you, or really more traffic, then you're creating a better space. And finally, Rolando, it's giving you something to sell. Look, Ocean Drive 25 years ago when we got down here, it was the cat's meow. And I'm pleased to hear it still is important. But you know, in Miami, you've got a lot of other things to sell. And if we did, or you did, some sort of a major interesting change, you get to reposition Ocean Drive and say, guess what we've done? You know, it's not that we've just widened the sidewalks by 2 feet, or we've made this thing one way, or we've eliminated, one something. You've really reinvented the street in a very positive way. Now, I wouldn't suggest, so if somebody says to me, would you do all of these things? No. My answer would be no. What I would do is, this goes back to what Tony Goldman says, vision is daydreaming with your feet on the ground. So, I hate to say the words, hire a consultant, whether it's Caesar or Walter Meyer, who's doing some work in Wynwood, creating some sort of a combined space here, and then do some various alternatives, options for Ocean Drive, and then point out to the consultant, look, here are the operational problems we have that you really have to deal with, and please tell us how deliveries and drop-offs and everything else could be solved under your scheme. And then the second thing I'd do, going back to the types of things that you do, Rolando, is do some testing. So you have 3 or 4 different schemes, so then maybe you close off the street on selective weekends, and then you ask your consumers what they think. What I think is not important. If you close the street or a block, or you've done something somewhere, do it as a test, and then get some feedback and see how it works. I think it just gets all back to, we're so fortunate to really live on this street. North of 15th Street, the next 60 miles, all the way up to Palm Beach, it's all the same. You got something that nobody else has. So my only request to you is really think carefully about it, try to take the blinders off, look hard at all the alternatives, and let's see what we can do. Thank you.